fans, I think, can sense it right now.
To go, inbound to Weatherspoon with one. Weatherspoon puts up the three. It's no good!
The Liberty Flames are still dancing.
Fan the Flame to the biggest victory in school history.
Georgia to inbound, gets to the AC. Deep three, pull up. He banked it in! He banked it in!
Shot at the buzzer. Good! It's good! It's good! It's Woodward!
Larry Blair, reverse layup, up and in, and he's fouled.
Man, you talk about degree of difficulty.
With two, Georgie at the buzzer. Got it! He got it!
Darius McGee, a game for the ages.
And Liberty wins 4 games in the Big South Tournament to take home the 2013 crown.
Look at Bio Baxter now.
25 for Colin Porter.
Holmesley, splash!
Shiloh Robinson with an effort play.
And Liberty keeps on coming.
A huge basket by Kyle Rowe.
Got it! Pacheco with the 3.
Liberty, put your dancing shoes on.
Well, hey, friends, what's going on? Welcome into the ASOR of Red basketball podcast. Nick Kirby joined by the Reverend, the Dr. Will Mathews, Jon Manson, and our special guest tonight, Joel Vander Pol. We'll get to everyone here in just a second, but Will, it's turning into February. I hope it's getting a little warmer there. It's still very, very cold up in my neck of the woods. Are you warming up with some coffee?
Listen, I'm getting older. I do want to sleep tonight, so I do not have coffee with me. But listen, in the morning, 5:30, I'll have the Ironclad on. That's what I drink. That's my go-to. So I want to encourage everyone to check out some Ironclad.
Okay, what flavor are we rocking these days?
Of Ironclad coffee or this?
Yeah. Well, no one cares about that. They don't sponsor the show.
Will, have you done an ad before?
Yeah, been a minute since last week. Man, so the last purchase I had from Ironclad was a big bag of the Honduras San Lazaro. So still working my way through that. Got a bag of Mermoose on reserve in the pantry. So I'm quite set up with Ironclad for a little while here.
And Ironclad is now open in Lynchburg, Candler Station. So stop by and check them out. Whether you're living in Lynchburg or stop by in Lynchburg for a Liberty sporting event.
Well, that is fantastic. That's great news. Excited about that. And then, of course, Ironclad Coffee. You can buy all your beans and all your coffee accessories at ironcladcoffee.com. Great supporter of ASOR of Red. Great supporter of all things Liberty Athletics. So pass the love back to our friends at Ironclad Coffee. Ironcladcoffee.com. Orders online. I'll be sure to check that out. John, you've been a busy traveling man. How you been, my friend?
Doing good. Bumped into our guy, Joel Vander Pol in Kennesaw, and made the trek on over to Jacksonville Saturday and got one win, which I think when we talked last time going into the 3-game road trip, we were talking about, what should the expectations be for this trip. And I think we all kind of felt, if you can go 2-1, you feel pretty good. And we did just that. Of course, the third game being the loss makes us not feel as good as we could have. But I think we should be all pleased with a 2-1 road trip.
Absolutely. And Joel Vander Pol, Liberty basketball, a legend. How are we doing, my friend? Great to have you back on the pod. I'm really happy you were able to join us tonight.
I always enjoy doing this, so thanks for having me. We're doing great, man. Hanging out. 3 boys making us go crazy over here, so we're enjoying life. Got to take my oldest to the Kennesaw game. Only problem was I thought it was at 7, so we had quite a bit of time to kill. I was like, John, they haven't set up ticketing. Like, where are we? Act like you've been there before to Conference USA. And I was just an hour early, so it was had some errands to run, but good time. Always good seeing John.
You're an hour early. I can't believe Richie McKay wouldn't let you in there and give the team a little pep talk.
I didn't want to overwhelm them with just living up to the expectations that I would have for them. And whenever I speak to a group, it's oftentimes a lot to take in. And if I had given the pregame speech, they may not have made it to an 8:00 tip. I tend to be long-winded, as we'll find out around 11 o'clock when we finish up here tonight. So it's probably in Richie's best interest.
Or they might would have won the game. You never know.
They won that game.
Oh, they did win that game, but they could have been inspired to win against Jacksonville State.
I will tell you, and maybe Nick Kirby will get this reference. There's a Will Ferrell doing Harry Carey, and I think he's interviewing Jeff Goldblum, I believe, old school. And Harry Carey, Will Ferrell's asking all of these insane questions. And at one point, he's like, just say yes and we'll move on. That's what I was thinking when you were doing the Ironclad. And he was like, you drinking coffee tonight? You're like, no, I'm actually drinking what? And I was like, just say yes and we'll move on.
Yeah, it's a botch, but no do-overs. We're live.
He's a
reverend.
He's a reverend. He's a doctor.
Never told a lie.
He's more honest than us.
Never.
Us heathens, we can lie for ads. Dr. Will Mathews cannot. Well, fellas, I guess I believe you've both been there a couple times now. For those of us who haven't been to Kennesaw, it seemed like a really good atmosphere on Thursday night on TV.
Go ahead, Joel.
Yeah, I've been going for years, right? This is probably the sixth game, maybe more than that, because there's been some conference tournament games or whatever. It's really interesting to kind of see the evolution of Kennesaw State basketball when they were first in the ASUN, and we were probably pretty new in the ASUN as well. But I was doing radio with Alan York. There was not much juice in the gym, and they kind of their setup is different than ours in the arena, where they have a lower bowl, and then on each sideline they can extend, but they can also drop down curtains. And man, those curtains have been down for years. This, obviously for the past several years, as the rivalry has gotten a little bit more livened up, you start to sense that that arena's got some more juice in it. Now, Kennesaw is also a commuter school, so they don't have a ton of on-campus juice like Liberty does, or other. There's probably a lot of commuter schools, frankly, in Conference USA. But credit to them for what they've done over the past several years, because the environment is great. And I of course, Liberty and Kennesaw's back and forth over the past several years in all sports has added to that. So it's been fun to see that be a packed out gym until 4 minutes left this time, and then even the several past times. So it's been fun to see the evolution. It's a very good road environment and a very fun one. I think it was Zach maybe who did the post game press conference, and I think even he referenced that. It's becoming a very good environment. Aaron Schreiner was getting earfuls the entire game, which is awesome because he also gives it back. So it's a lot of fun, really good environment. And frankly, probably not an easy. They were 9-0 at home. It's not an easy place to play.
Yeah, that was my third time making the trip to the KSU Convocation Center. The two previous times were both, 2 years ago when we lost both of those games, including that ASUN title game. And obviously the ASUN title game had a great atmosphere, but I'm sure everyone saw the video that the Kennesaw State University account put out pregame, just talking about how they've beaten Liberty and all the different sports and stuff, which they have, but we're now 10-2 all time against them in basketball. Just want to throw that in there, but yeah, it was a great environment. They did, when I first got there, they had, I don't know if it was like that when they opened the doors and you walked in, Joel, but they had the curtains were down, they were closed when I first got in there. So I was curious how big the crowd was going to be, but 5 minutes or so after they opened the doors to fans, they open the curtains or raise the curtains or however you say it, and they filled up both of those upper deck sections, and they're loud, they're engaged, their band does a really good job, and so it was a great environment. It was I don't know, again, we'll talk about it more in a minute. I was at the Jack State game Saturday, and that was a good environment too. But I mean, it was no comparison to the Kennesaw crowd, and that Kennesaw crowd would rival just about any crowd that, or most crowds we've had at Liberty Arena. I mean, it was juiced. They don't like Liberty, and you can tell that. And but it was a great environment for a college basketball game. It was a good game, and the guys played really well. And I'm sure we all got nervous there in the second half, but they kept answering every punch that the Owls had.
Joel, have you been to the new Liberty Arena?
I have, yeah.
Yeah, John, for all of us that don't get a chance to go there a lot because we just live out of town, like, what are some games in recent memory where the student section has just been alive for some games in the new Liberty Arena, and how would Kennesaw State's atmosphere compare to that? You touched on it a little bit there. But...
Yeah, no, that's a good question. Like, the first game that pops in my head is a Grand Canyon game last year, which I know we don't have good memories of, but some of that was due to Grand Canyon and them bringing a decent contingent of their fans. But that was a really good environment. I think also to the Missouri game at Liberty Arena, what, 3 or 4 years ago. Great environment. Some of those ASUN games, again, another loss, but the Bellarmine game in the conference tournament, that was a great environment. The Eastern Kentucky game last year or 2 years ago in the semifinals, the game before that Kennesaw State championship game, that was a really good environment. I don't think the Convocation Center at KSU this past week was quite to that level, but it was certainly on par with any crowd we've probably had this year, as far as the noise level and just the environment. I mean, it's a tough place to play, and I think Coach McKay, I don't remember if he said it in a post game or in one of my conversations with him over the weekend, but he said I think he said it post game Thursday night that crowd, is as good of crowd as they've had in any Conference USA road game, going on 2 years now in the league.
A couple more things too. Just the way that John mentioned it, but their band is exceptionally loud and very good. Yes. Very, very good. But even the way that the end zone seating kind of hovers, it doesn't go down to the floor. It kind of sits at a balcony. And so there's this vantage point for one of the student sections to really kind of be over and get in the face and the ears of the opponent. But Will, I would say one thing, the biggest difference between the two environments is Liberty's production crew is, well, the people at Liberty are the best. I'll say that. That's one. And that's probably where John thought I was going. Liberty's production crew is world-class. That is very difficult to find at other schools. And so when you look, Kennesaw's fans were loud, his band was loud, their speakers were loud. But Liberty's home environment is so well produced, you feel like you are in $1 million production at all times. And that, I would say that's the biggest difference that we want to talk about, as well as just that Liberty's environment's exceptional from that standpoint.
And Julie makes a good comment here too about Jacksonville State's band, really one of the best in Cell. Their band was phenomenal at the game Saturday. I don't know how much that comes across on the TV broadcast.
Didn't at all.
It didn't, but their band is amazing. Not just when they're playing during timeouts, but they're just loud and yelling at the opposing teams during the game. They do a really good job. And, like I said, I asked their SID when I got there, before the gates got open, I was like, where's the student section? I was like, is it that behind that basket? He's like, oh yeah, it's that one section right there to the left. And it's like, there might've been 50 Jacksonville State students there, and that was their student section. Again, those fans were into it, those students were into it, but their band was really good playing, but also good just fans, and provided the best environment they could there too. So I agree, Julie, good point.
What was your favorite cover that the band did, John?
I'm so locked into the game, I don't even listen to what they say, so I really don't know. Now, and you're going to judge me here, but the lead singer for the band Alabama was courtside, like 3 seats down from me, right next to Alan York, and he went over and got a selfie with them, so that was kind of cool. I think he's a Jack State alum.
Yeah.
If he's not, would be a weird place for him to be on a Saturday night.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I know, Kirby, this is not where you want the conversation to go all night, but I just wanted to ask.
Here. I'm
Dude,
just here.
forget the data. Let's talk about vibes, man.
We're just chatting, man. I just wanted to ask Joel, like, any games in your memory that stick out of road games that were just the noise and the fans giving it to you was.
High Point did a really good job. They were really small gym. Very just obnoxious. Like it's awesome. Like these are good things. Obnoxious fans, like hostile. Those are good things. They always packed it out unless it was an over Christmas game, but it was a smaller arena, so it was able to feel that way. I remember my redshirt year when we were at Coastal. It was the year before they opened the new facility. So remember that was a junk gym. They were insane in there, and like Coastal. They party quite a bit, and that was they brought that to the student section, and they were really getting after it. So in conference, you look at Radford and Charleston Southern. We're good at times, but Radford, Charleston Southern, none of them stick out. Longwood, I'm sure John was at a couple of those. There was the one where I think we lost like 101 to 102 or something like that. That was an insane game again. But what stinks about the Big South days, man, all those gyms on the road were so small. And so, like, you got these, I guess, cool environments, but they didn't make you feel like you were part of a legit program kind of thing. Like, it's like, oh, my gosh, this is sick. These 40 people are really, really giving it to us. So, like, that kind of thing was like we had Presbyterian and we had, all those. But High Point really always give us their best from a fan standpoint. I felt that they were educated too. Like they always knew who players were, did their research, girlfriends' names, the whole thing. Those are probably the ones that stick out the best to me.
Did you get to play VMI at all?
I did. I was only there for the cadet when the cadets were there, maybe twice. We oftentimes played them early on in conference, so they were still Christmas break. I do remember Austin Keenan gave us the loudest 40 points on senior night that I've ever seen in my entire life. But that was a senior night, so that was later in the semester. That's a great call out, Kirby, because that was a really good one. There was just like half or just slightly more than half of our times there was on break, and so we didn't always get the experience that people have great memories of there.
With the one game with the full cadets there, and that was an experience. Yeah. They were intense. They were chanting the worst part, at us. It was great. I loved it.
The most hostile. I think
we were at that game together.
The most hostile part about the VMI games was driving on a charter bus to Lexington. That was the worst because
terrifying.
That curve cannot support a charter bus, right? And we'll just trust Buddy, and I'm sure he'll get us there. That was his name, and he's still a bus driver. He was at the Kennesaw game.
Wow,
that's cool.
The glory days. All right, well let's talk about these last. We had 3 games since we last talked. FIU had no problem with, like I said. I told you we'd take care of business with FIU. They stink. They're not a good program. That's the one team we can count on. I was very impressed with the Kennesaw win. I thought that would be more of a toss-up game, and it ended up being an 8-point game. But it felt like Liberty controlled that game throughout. Let's talk about those two. Will, let's start with you. What kind of stood out from those 2 games?
Well, I was nervous about FIU, but I'm always nervous about every conference game. So no surprise there. Kennesaw, I think you maybe mentioned it in the last podcast about they're just not like a very good shooting team. And I felt like that really stood out to me. Like just a lot of good looks and just bad shots that didn't go down. It seemed like at times they were kind of chipping away at the lead, but Liberty would just extend it back out. They would have like a key play somewhere down the line. So 2 out of 3. We'll take that, I think.
You have to score to beat this team. You have to. Other opponents have to score to beat this Liberty team. You're not going to come in and beat Liberty without having a decent offense, probably a pretty good offensive night.
Was it 15-0 when the opponent scores 70 or less? Is that right?
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. Is I tweeted that out earlier this week, and that held true. We hold both Kennesaw and FIU under 70 and win those games, and then Jack State ended up getting 72, I think it was, and they put the L on us. But yeah, I mean, going back to the Kennesaw game, I said it a minute ago, but just to reiterate and reemphasize, I was really impressed with how the team played and responded because, we saw it against Jack State. They went on that run there in the second half. Louisiana Tech did the same thing. I was looking back at that game some today to start the second half. And another thing, I'm kind of, my brain's all over the place right now, but Liberty has not trailed at half all season. We're 22 games in.
What?
We've either been leading or
What a
tied at every game at halftime this season. And I looked at that during the Jack State game, and I was like, wow, that's crazy. And if you think back to it, we've really controlled a lot of these games we've played. Even the FAU game, if you go back to that one, that's a game it felt like we should have won, and they kind of got us there in the second half. And then obviously we remember the Western Kentucky game. Louisiana Tech, I mean, we were leading most of that first half. They went on a run early second half. Jack State, same thing. We led the entire first half. They went on a run early second half. So that Kennesaw game, we kind of controlled and led pretty much the entire first half, and they kind of made that run early in the second half. And I was nervous. I'm sure we all were like, oh no, here it goes again. But our guys kept responding. Every time Kennesaw would get it to 6 or get it to 4 or 8 or whatever it was, we would push it back out to 8, 10, whatever. And that was just a really mature. Coach McKay talked about that before he went on the road trip. Just how the team is very mature, and they really are. Colin Porter, I don't think we're talking enough about the job Colin Porter is doing. He's having a tremendous season as a point guard. He's stepped up, especially since Isaiah Enon went down, and is scoring more. But he's just you think back to those really good Liberty teams, which is almost every year, right?
2013.
2013. I mean, we had terrific guard play led by our 7-footer, Joel Vander Pol. But no, Georgie Pacheco Ortiz, he was so steady, right? Think back to during Joel's time, Jesse Sanders, probably the greatest point guard in Liberty basketball history. Colin Porter is right there with those guys, in my opinion, with the season he's had. He's shooting over 40%, like 45% from 3. He doesn't turn the ball over much. He's just a great, and I know he's 5'10" and he's small, but he has improved greatly on defense. Look back to that Kennesaw game. He had 4 or 5 steals. He played really good defensively on Saturday against Jack State too. So I don't think we're talking enough about the job that he's done, but really impressed Thursday night last week against Kennesaw State. Just a maturity and how the team kept responding. Every time Kennesaw punched, we punched right back and we're able to outlast them.
Yeah, I'm really impressed with Colin. A couple things that are maybe difficult to see. He's very strong, and he is slight in his height. But, I mean, if you similar to John Caleb and Jesse, both Sanders boys, it didn't matter how tall they were. They were both not going to get knocked around. And what is so impressive to me about Colin is, and I was talking to Coach Johnson about this before the game, and I was like, I know he could go for 35 in a game, no question. He's like, yeah, that's not his role. And I'm like, no, I understand that. But his shot selection is so good. The threes he chooses to take, the ones where he decides to drive, the ones where mid-range game is pretty much dead. And even against Jack State, he had a great, just opportunistic mid-range that every time he shoots it, I think it's going in. And I think that even little things, man, in the second half, they came out and started pressuring us 3/4 court and really started trying to trap at the top. And that was when they went on probably an 8-0 run or a 10-2 run, something like that. And I wasn't thinking, here we go again, quite yet. But it was very obvious. It was a direct reflection of the pressure that they were applying. But then what Colin did for the rest of, once they kind of got it back to a man, they shrunk the game by every single time they inbounded. they would not touch the ball because what it does is it takes seconds off the clock, but the shot clock doesn't start, or your time to cross half court is a shot. Well, it seems like a little bit of a deal when you look at like, oh, great, 4 seconds, congratulations. Extrapolate that times 12 possessions, and then you just got a minute back of the game that you're leading, which, especially in nut crunching time at the end of the game, is you can kind of feel it. This could go one way or the other, but if the game's a minute shorter at that point, all those little possessions that they were just making really smart decisions in the back. So I'm incredibly impressed with Colin, and we always were when he was a freshman. But I think his shot selection and just his control of the game at all times is what sticks out. And I think some things too, man, like some things just sell way better in person than they do on TV. Like my opinion of Zach Cleveland, when I told you, John, my opinion of Zach Cleveland went way up. Watching him in person, I think there's a lot of things there that might get lost on people who are only able to take a game in on TV. But Colin Porter being probably top of that list.
And the stats agree with you. I'm glad you guys brought up Colin Porter. There's a site called Evan Maya that does some like in-depth player analysis, and they say Colin Porter's been the best player on the team overall. And the defense is surprising. So if you're watching, the 0 is kind of an even. So a 0 would be your average number. Colin Porter's rating well above average defensively and very good offensively. It's actually the 3rd best player right now in the conference, which is pretty incredible to see. Now the player statistics, I try to take some of those with a grain of salt. I don't think they're as well like studied and have as much of a run as like a site like Ken Palm that does team analysis, but this is kind of becoming the trend, this site, of terms of just player analysis that a lot of really smart people are buying in on. So I think Porter's been great. Cleveland, as I mentioned, ranks as the 2nd best team, and then Taylor Peter, if you look at his offense, man, that is a elite offensive number. If you're above a 3, that's about as good as you get at like the Conference USA level. Exciting. And you guys' point about Cleveland is there's just so many ball handlers for only having one like true point guard on this team. They're always able to create shots. That's kind of the cool thing, is there's so many different lineups combinations, but it doesn't feel like some of the teams in the past where you just have like these ugly possessions. They're pretty much always able to get somewhat of a decent look. Do you kind of see that too, Joel?
Yeah. So what's interesting to me is oftentimes the very first, it's not even an action, the very first trigger in the offense is a high ball screen with Zach and Caden, or Zach and Colin. And what that does, it tells you, are they just going to switch? Are they going to fight through it? If they fight through it, you have a chance for a breakdown to go make a play. But if they switch, then you can kind of, all right, big on Colin or big on Caden. All right, let's just back this thing up and see what we have, because there's going to then be a mismatch, because then either Zach has a little on him, or maybe it's Owen at the time, or then we all know Caden's first step can get by any big, right? And so what's interesting to me is we're not running these set plays all the time. Often, and sometimes they do, to their credit. But for the vast majority, it's let's see how they handle this ball screen, or this initial it's a fake screen. They're not trying to get anything off of it for the most part. But then you can kind of reevaluate and say, how do they play that? Now, what are the matchups? And likely you can then exploit a mismatch. Interestingly enough, Kennesaw switched that most of the time. And so I would say, let's just say 75% of the possessions that I have in my memory bank, they run that faux screen, and then Caden or Colin has a big, they're 5 or they're 4 on them. And then it's saying, and then you kind of see like Cleveland get down and they'll post it to, they'll throw it into him or Owen, or Caden with a first step. And then Caden's going to beat someone. He can either get to the cup or make a play for somebody else, and similar to Colin. That to me, again, and I was talking to a former coach of mine, certain programs are like 100% committed to it. Like NC State this year, they that's all they do. Like they're not going to sweat, or they're not going to fight with those screens. And that's a decision that programs will make. But it was really interesting to me, especially exploiting Kennesaw in that regard, is like, all right, at some point in this possession is a high likelihood that we've got little on big or big on little, and then whatever the defense does to adjust to that, we're going to exploit because we have playmakers. Talen's an elite athlete. So to me, I thought it was really interesting that there were zero adjustments. The adjustments that came from Kennesaw were the pressure, not how they were handling the initial action that Liberty was obviously committed to throughout the night.
On Talon, that's kind of become a discussion a little bit. Is should Talon Peter be moved into the starting lineup? And I don't like to view like starting lineups. I view end of game lineups. That's your starting five, in my opinion. And Peter's always out there at the end of the game. So in my opinion, he is a starter without being a starter right now. So I don't think that's a big deal. Joel, would you mix it up at all, or just ride what's been working?
Number one statistic that you need to look at is minutes played, not when were those minutes played. Now, to your point, your closers are going to be in. Liberty rotates a good amount towards the end of games based on situation. I think there was a time where we had, maybe it was Tomas coming off the bench, or like, it doesn't matter if you have a good culture within the team and you are never ego less, but fewer egos and maybe a open communication. If he's playing 29 minutes a game, who cares when they are? And oftentimes it's really nice to have it's not even relief off the bench or just like juice off the bench. It's like, I don't disagree with Liberty's starting lineup, whether Talon were in there or not. I think it's just something where it's like, if that's working and he's fully committed and bought into that role, why would you not just like, we don't have a difficult time getting off the hot starts. So why wouldn't you just, because another thing with Talon too, he can sub for 4 guys. So it might also be interesting to see, where are we missing a matchup? Is someone too lean and we need more strength? Is someone too, like, it's really interesting because now you're replacing him for where you feel you can exploit with him the best, as opposed to getting it out there in the open to start the game. I take your silence as astounding agreement.
I feel like I'm under a learning tree right now. So,
no, I think that's a really good point, Joel. And the first few games after Isaiah went down to injury, it seemed like, coach, again, every time he gets to conference play, he constricts that rotation and plays fewer guys. That was even more exasperated this year with the loss of Enan. But those first few games after Enan went down, it would not be until at least after the first media timeout, if not 14, 13 minutes on the game clock, before he would turn to Talon. Against Kennesaw and Jack State both, there's still 18 minutes on the clock, and Talon's coming in. So,
media hasn't even happened yet.
Yeah, it's really quick. He came in for Javon Moffmer at Jack State. I think he came in for Owen against Kennesaw State to start the game. So that's a good point. Something I hadn't really thought about is, he can't, and obviously he can come in for either Colin or Caden as well too. So, or Zach for that matter.
Probably
so
5. He could probably come in for all 5.
He could come in for all 5, because you could just slide Zach to the 5 if you need to take Owen out. But that's something I hadn't really thought about, and it's a good point. But yeah, I think I agree with both of you, all 3 of you. It's it doesn't matter if Talon starts or not. Like, he's playing starters minutes.
But you're not crazy as a fan, right? If you're saying he's coming in at the 18-minute mark, why don't you just start him? Like, you're not crazy for thinking that, but you're also not crazy for what we just talked about either. Does that make sense? Like, you don't have to. I think he's an advantage wherever and however he plays, and he is clearly bought into the role. I think one thing that I was right behind the bench, white vest. Not sure if you saw me, but the culture
can't
and
miss you.
What's that?
Can't miss you.
Like the morale on the bench, there is no pouting. There is and so if you have a team where it's like, hey, this is your role, like, I have decided not to start you and play you 30 minutes a game. Like, okay, cool, like, great. I'll go get 34 against La Tech or whoever it was. Like, great, cool. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he's played last last 6 games, whatever, 32, 29, 24, 28, 32, and 31 minutes. I've tried to find where that ranks on the team, but I imagine that's probably like the 3rd most minutes of anyone. I know it's more than like Aquino's getting at this point, and I believe it's more than Moffmer recently for sure. So, but it's I guess a talking point nonetheless. Let's talk about the Jacksonville State game. Man, it felt like Liberty was going to pull off a 3-0 road trip at halftime, and I was like, I can't believe this is incredible. And Jacksonville State, I mean, to their credit, they got a good team, and I tell you what, Ray Harper, he kind of gets on my nerves sometimes, but man, that guy can coach, and it feels like every year they come in like pick 7th or 8th in the conference, and he does a lot with, I don't want to say less because I think they have good players, but without expectations. You got to give them a lot of credit. I'm really looking forward to the rematch at Liberty Arena. But I don't know. It's hard to be too critical of that game because we said 2-1 road trip. It is what it is. Liberty's playing really well. At this point, it's just you're kicking yourself more about those 2 home games to UTEP and WKU that got away.
Yeah, Jacksonville State's a hot team right now. I mean, they kind of strolling through right now. Who's to say that doesn't change at some point later on in the season? Maybe they get cold at the right time for us. So, yeah, I'm not too concerned about that. We all said 2 and 3, 2 out of 3. You're still in good shape. A lot of this doesn't matter except for what you're it doesn't even really going to affect your seeding that much. So you just want to keep everybody healthy and something like that.
Yeah, I mean, you want to compete for and play for a conference title, regular season conference title, and the Flames are in the mix there. Obviously, Jacksonville State's kind of in good position right now. At 7-2, a game up on Middle, and then 2 games up on everybody else in the league, basically. That's all tied for 3rd. But just about that game, yeah, I mean, Liberty kind of, like you said, Nick, Liberty kind of controlled the game throughout the first half. Got off to a 7-0 start to begin the game. I think it was like, I don't remember, 14-2 or something like that. But Liberty had a really good half. I think we were up by 6 at halftime, and I remember looking at the scoreboard at halftime, I was thinking, man, feels like we should be up by more than this. So I was a little nervous about that. And then, like I said earlier, is Jack State went on that, I think it was a 10-0 run to take their first lead. And then it was an extended 16-2 run over 6.5 minutes there early in the second half. I went back when I got home Sunday and watched that portion of the game over. And it seemed like Liberty really settled for shots on the offensive end during that. I mean, there was 2 Taylor Peter missed 3-pointers. Owen had a clean look down in the paint that it just rimmed out. I think Colin had a shot that he missed. Obviously
Zach took a 3.
Zach took a 3. That. He did. I remember that one too. That was late in the shot clock though. It was down to like 4. So I think you kind of live with that one. But now Zach and Owen both made a 3 that night. So
Zach made wasn't the first shot of the game was a 3 from Zach?
It was Owen in the corner.
Owen, yeah.
I think it was later.
It was like 3 possessions later or something.
Yeah, later.
I was like, whoa, what is happening?
Zach. I was sitting there thinking, man, like, don't look up the stats for when they've both made a 3 in a game. It's probably the only time all season. But yeah, I mean, they come out going that 16-2 run. We just couldn't get the stops that we needed, and then we couldn't get the buckets that we needed to kind of stop their run. And again, Jack State's really good. They're confident. The biggest thing that concerns me about that game is the way that their guards kind of took it at really Caden more than Colin or the others. They really felt like, Caden couldn't get a shot. He struggled, which it happens. I don't think it'll happen again. I think he was over 7 from 3, but the part that really hurt was he wasn't getting a shot, but then on the other end, they were just taking it to him in the paint and getting to the bucket and scoring their fair share of baskets off of him. And so you kind of think, like, do you bench Caden during that time because he can't buy a shot. But at the same time, I was texting with somebody during the game, and I don't think you can bench him. Like, he's just too good, and at any minute, and all the shots he got were good looks. Like, it felt really good, and so you just have to live and die with that. It's kind of like you're reminded of the Darius McGee game at Kennesaw State where he was 0 for 11 from 3, and it's just unfortunate that happened at that game and that moment for Darius, such an amazing player. But, Coach McKay, I asked him about it after the game Saturday, and he said, I don't want it to happen ever, but guys have off nights, and I'm glad it's happened now, and hopefully it doesn't happen again in March.
Those are the 3 games you need to be hot. The other games really don't matter. I mean, at this point, be hot in 3 days in March, and the rest really doesn't matter.
I didn't catch all of this game. I caught bits and pieces of it. Did you feel like this was kind of one of those games where it felt like the minutes that the starters are putting in? Because, I mean, you're getting some spells from some other guys, but they don't seem to be very quality minutes.
I
feel like that was like a game where it was kind of catching up a little bit.
I love to get Joel's opinion on that because, Joel, you've played Division I level. None of us have. But, Coach has been asked about it, and he's like, these guys will play 40 minutes every night if they can. But that's something that I felt ever since conference play started is like, if you can get something out of Xander, G, Brett Decker, I don't care who, somebody on the bench, Caillou, 2 minutes here and there, 4 possessions at a time just to spell those guys, not necessarily for that game, even for the second half of the game, but so they have enough in the tank when you get to Huntsville, right? Like, it might be difficult game to game, but again, we've already talked about it. Like, yeah, you want to play for that regular season title, but what's the difference between the 4 seed and the 2 seed? I mean, you might have it, Nick, that you'll throw up later is I think right now, and again, there's 6 teams tied for third, so I don't know how you break that tie, but somebody put something out there on Twitter, and it had Louisiana Tech as the 8 seed. Could you imagine being the 1 seed at Jacksonville State, which would be now, and having to play Louisiana Tech in your first game? Like, so I don't really think there's much of a difference between being, you get a day off after the quarterfinals if you're 1 or the 2 seed, but I don't think there's much difference as long as you're in that top 6. But Joel, I'd love to get your opinion on minutes played.
Couple things. I'll get to that in a second. Couple things. Liberty was 10 for 34 from 3. Caden was 0 for 7, and they got outscored 17 points the second half. We shot 7 free throws. Like, you're not winning that game with those stats. And I also agree with you, John. Like, every time Caden shoots, I think it's going in. Whether it's a step back, whether it's wide open, I bet that's a tougher gym to play in and a tough gym to get hot in unless that's where you practice. But it seems to me like, to your point, Jacksonville State was very comfortable going at us and not winning the game by 3s. They shot 11, right? So
they only had 2 in the second half.
Okay,
they only
so
shot 2 in the second half.
They're just going to direct line drive if they have that. College basketball and human performance is way different now than it was when I played. Meaning, I'm not as concerned about these guys' fatigue, knowing what I know about how they track data, track performance, track recovery, all that stuff. They're all wearing GPSs at all time. They're all wearing Oura rings when they're not playing. They're all wearing heart monitors when they're playing, and they're probably wearing a Whoop. Like, so my point is, like, they know exactly how much each player should practice. And there are times where, and to Coach McKay's credit, a lot of coaches would not give the strength and conditioning staff and Rob Hornet and Aaron Schreiner the amount of power that they have to push or hold guys in practice. And so when I was playing, you were likely missing out on opportunity if you were not full go for practice, meaning someone was probably coming for your minutes if you were not full go at practice. That is not the case anymore. And so there are days where if Schreiner's like, hey, Caden's going for 20 minutes of practice and he's done, and once he reaches a certain heart rate, he's done. And so I don't have the same concern about wear and tear and fatigue as I once would have, knowing how they run their program, knowing how scientifically backed their evaluation of their players' readiness. They have a readiness quotient every morning for every player based on the previous day's activity and the previous night's sleep. Did not exist, right? Darius McGee was, actually, I won't go into that. He had the highest readiness quotient of any player every single morning. So like, all right, great. Like he can go. So I'm not as concerned as I once was about like, man, these guys are taking a lot of minutes. And it's like, they're running their program far more like an NBA program than a 2012 NCAA Division I program. And it shows, I hate to say this, but like we've had a pretty healthy decade since Henry Barrera and Rob Hornet have been, and Aaron Schreiner's been there for almost 20 years, right? So that's a lot of data to support how they are treating these players, how they are resting, how they are recovering, how they're eating, how they're sleeping, to where I'm not as concerned about, man, Caden, they're not playing back-to-backs. Caden played 36 minutes and went 0 for 7. He must be tired. He's probably having an off night. He's probably in a great spot. So I'm not wildly gonna give that too much credit, because I know that they have an exact calculation of the player's physical capacity every single day for practice and for games, right? Of course, if you have a double overtime game and have to play the next day, like, got it. Like, yeah, you got to have Decker come get you 8 points. You got to have Xander come hit 2 threes off the bench. You get, like, for sure. But that's not what we're talking about right now. And even the way that they travel, like, they're not going through TSA. Like these guys are taken very well care of, and their bodies, I believe, are being far better taken care of. And you're able to get more high quality gameplay minutes out of the guys that you want to, which tells Coach McKay you can shrink the depth if you want to, because our guys are going to be ready no matter what. That's my take. You can disagree with me if you want to.
First of all, that was a tremendous take and amazing data that I didn't know half of what you just said. So I'm glad you came on.
Are we learning tonight, guys? Are we learning?
Yes. I'm learning a ton. But then the second part about the travel, I echo what you just said, because I was a little jealous when I was talking to Bill Smith at Liberty Basketball SID after the Jack State game. And I was like, what's y'all's travel schedule? He's like, we're scheduled, they had to drive 30 minutes or whatever to the airport. And we're scheduled to land in Lynchburg. This is like, what, I don't know, 7 o'clock or whatever, 6:30 Central Time in the evening. He's like, we're scheduled to land at 9:45 in Lynchburg. I'm like,
they're playing Xbox at 10:30. Like,
yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
I mean, that's just amazing. I'm sitting here thinking, can you take me with you? Like, I got 8 hours to drive home. But no, I mean, that's awesome. And it's like an NBA type thing. Now, I'm sure there's some parts of travel, like they had to bus from Kennesaw to Jack State, but that was only like an hour and a half, 2 hour drive. But still, great stuff, Joel.
What would you have done with your car?
I don't care. I would have figured it out.
Sold it.
Future project.
Yeah, that's a tomorrow John problem, not tonight.
Hey, babe, crazy thing. I'm going to need you to go pick up my car. Where's it at? Alabama.
Shout out to the fried AKC Jack State memes in the chat. Did point out Jacksonville State's best player actually had a bad game too in that game. Jaron Pierre, really talented player. He only went 2 for 11 inside the arc. 2 for 11 inside the arc, and they still won. Now
he's the current favorite for ASON Conference USA Player of the Year. But shout out to the fried AKC. I actually met him when I was down there. A good guy. I don't think he wants his identity to be known in Jack State circles, but he's a good guy. And he said something about number one in football, basketball, and ribs. We shared some ribs together. So
broke ribs.
Yeah, we broke ribs together. That's true.
Now, I will point out shot quality did say it was 64-64, which is the only thing that matters, is what shot quality says.
And also, I'll say you're number one in basketball as of February 3rd. We'll see what happens mid-March.
I guarantee you no one at Jacksonville State wants to see Liberty in their bracket. I don't really want to see Jacksonville State in our bracket either, though. So I think the feeling's probably mutual there. One thing about the tournament, I I get Siege just that's been a common question I've been getting is can you break down the tiebreakers? I was like, well, I mean, there's like 7 teams tied right now at 5-4, so I'm not even going to try right now. But it's head to head, and then it's a group. If you have a group, it's that group's head to head records against each other, and then if you still have a tie, it's the record against the top seed. That hasn't changed, has it, John? I don't know why these conferences don't post the stuff on their website. You think like maybe that would be important information.
Yeah, we'll get into it more once we get later into the season. So far out, and if you had 6 teams, like that's just a nightmare to try to solve. But yeah, it's always head to head. And one good thing I'll say is it's awesome that we won't have this next year with 12 teams, but it's awesome that everybody plays a balanced schedule, right? Remember, even in the A-Sun, like that's why we had to play at Kennesaw State in that championship games, because we only had to play them once, and it happened to be in Kennesaw. So now it's different because we're on a neutral court now in Huntsville, but everybody's playing a balanced schedule, so that's good. But yeah, the first tiebreaker will be your head-to-head. Either if it's a 2-team tie or 6-team tie, it's head-to-head amongst those teams tied. And then the second tiebreaker, you start with whoever's number 1 in the standings. If somebody went 1-0 or 1-1 and the other teams went 0-2, then the 1-1 team gets that nod. That's why we got the 4 seed last year, was because we had that win over both Sam Houston and La Tech, who are at the top of the standings. And then I'm sure at some point, probably the next tiebreaker after that is either just straight up net ranking or some computer ranking group, 3 or 4 different computer, which that's good for Liberty, because Liberty's, the highest ranked team in every system you look at in the league.
I have a question for Joel here in just a second, but I look at this bracket like Jack State, shout out, get your number 1 seed. You could play La Tech in your first game. I mean, like, I really like, you don't want to finish 8th or worse, because you have to play an extra game. Obviously that's a pretty big deal. You need to finish in the top 7,
top 6,
other than 6. Yeah. Thank you. Top 6, which I feel pretty confident Liberty's going to finish in the top 6. Things would have to really go south if you look at the schedule, in my opinion, for that to happen. But outside of that, I mean, I don't know if it matters. I mean, it's really going to, like, you could be the 1 and have bad matchups. There's nowhere where you're going to feel protected, I don't think, in any of the seeds. Now, my question, Joel, for you is this. I didn't think it mattered as much in years past. If you are the 1 or the 2 seed, you play on Wednesday, and then you get an off day on Thursday and you play on Friday. I think that sometimes playing back-to-back sometimes is better in these tournaments. As someone who watches a lot of college basketball, just see teams get hot. I know that happened with you guys. I know you guys had some days off and it was weird, but you guys had that continuation and it was good. But this year with Liberty having a smaller rotation, and you would expect it's going to be trimmed to the bare minimum in these tournaments, do you think it would actually be a little bit more of an advantage this particular year for Liberty to get one of those top 2 seeds and get that day off between the quarterfinals and the semifinals, if we're fortunate enough to advance?
You're asking me to make a hard stance, and I prefer to play both sides of the fence here.
You must not have been on social media much recently.
Yeah, right. No, so I'm telling you, if you have a good team and a good group of guys, you'll sell it either way. Meaning you'll say, hey, let's earn that rest. I will say the biggest thing is number of games, right? And exactly the point that you just made. But I'll tell you, there is something like, if you're Jack State, let's just say as it stands today, if you're Jack State in Middle Tennessee and you see Kennesaw go beat Florida International by 25 points, you're not loving your spot, right? Yeah. Similarly, Jacksonville State sees and so there's kind of this like, hey, I just want to get in the mix and start playing. That is always the way that I felt. I never cared about rest. I actually hated sitting and waiting. Hand up, I was playing 15 minutes a game, right? So I wasn't the one that we were concerned about from a fatigue standpoint. I also think in those conference tournament environments, someone's going to have a big game out of nowhere, and that's what just gives you that extra lift, right? It's like, we didn't see Bryce Decker having 15 points that game. Now, everyone in the building knows he's capable of it, right? Everyone knows Xander could go shoot 4 for 6 from 3, and everyone thinks every single one's going in. But I think those things kind of happen organically in the flow of that neutral site, a bunch of basketball, a bunch of games. Everything is do or die, right? I think those things happen organically in terms of an unsung hero that pops up, for one game, something like that. I would way rather play than feel like the conference tournament is happening without you and trends are building and momentum is being gained. And you're like, oh, we have to like I would almost rather lead off. Again, you're not going to lose your first game or most likely, but I would almost rather get your first win out of the way than have to sit on it and watch 5 games happen before you get a chance to play. That's how I am. Back to my human performance comments earlier, Rob Hornet and Aaron Schreiner might be saying we need an extra day, dude. I don't think that's the case. As a player, that's how I was, though. It's I don't want to watch all of this, a buzzer beater here or these things happening and not get to be in the mix. When you show up, you want to play. You don't want to prepare. Your preparation should have already happened at that point. I want to play, and I'm guessing the competitive nature of these guys probably want to show up and start and tip the ball.
Yeah, right. I would gamble to think too, on that day off, you're kind of overthinking things a little bit too, and that can kind of just the mental game can. But everything you say tonight, man, I'm just taking notes, learning,
But you're going to get it either way with the day off, is you're either going to have to sit and wait for your first game for a long time.
Yeah.
Because the 1 and 2s are going to play, where you actually have the 8 9s play one day, then the 1s and 2s, and then you play. Or you're going to have played and then have an off day. So either way, you're going to have to kind of sit and wait.
So I think it was a very almost the exact same bracket last year, except you only had the 1 play-in game because you had 9 teams. So you had the 8-9 play the first night and then play the 1. But the 1 and the 2 played their quarterfinal game that first night and had the day off. Correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't both the 1 and the 2 lose in the semifinals? I know the 1 seed was Sam Houston, and they lost to UTEP, which is what the game we would have been in. And when did Louisiana Tech lose the first night? They might have lost to the 2-7 game. I don't remember who Western Kentucky beat, but regardless, the 1 and the 2 seed, both of them were eliminated before you even got to the championship game.
La Tech lost to Middle Tennessee 70-67. Sam Houston won because they played FIU.
But I would testament that more to what we're seeing in the league right now is what 7 teams tied for whatever you said. It's it might just be a bunched up group, and it might be a testament to that more so than the schedule, the rest, that would be my guess. And it may be continuing on this season in terms of the seeding as we're looking at right now.
Yeah, as fans, we're probably putting too much into what day you play and how long you have off between games and all this stuff. And for the guys, it's just, let's just get out there, throw the ball up and see what happens.
It's not the NFL, right? It's not like everyone's injured. You need a bye week. It's not like the NFL where the wild card versus the 1 seed. I think it's very different. I think I got antsy resting, and I know that I'm speaking on behalf of my teammates too. We wanted to get there and show up and play. We didn't want to but again, Kirby would tell me if data tells me that I'm an idiot, which I'd say hand up, fair enough.
Well, I mean, in these conference tournaments, with the way college basketball is today, it's who makes the most threes. I mean, you could have all the talk about matchups and whatnot. One team's hot, one team's ice cold. Game over.
But I mean, okay, so think about the ACC tournament last year. Doesn't the ACC have 2 buys for their top teams, and NC State ran the whole thing or whatever?
Mm-hmm.
It's all right, obviously, and I think there's so many teams there. They're playing proper back-to-backs. It may have been 4 games in 5 days or 5 games, whatever it was. At that point, you're not thinking about how tired you are. You're competing, and if the shots, to Kirby's point, if the shots are going in, it doesn't matter who you play, frankly, because they're just going in that week. and you can have a run. But I don't know.
I think NC State was like less than a 1% chance to win that tournament or something. Like it was.
Were
it
they
was
even
nuts.
in the NCAA? They were a bubble team, weren't they?
Yeah.
No, they
were
were not.
out. They were out.
They had
They
to win
were
the
out.
last game. If they would have, even after the crazy run, if they would have lost the championship, they would.
They
I don't
would've
even know
been
if they
out.
would have played the NIT.
And their coach would have likely been fired too.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, he was on
Kevin
the hot
Keats,
seat.
right? Lynch is it Kevin Keats? Yeah, Lynchburg guy.
Yeah.
I sat behind DJ. What's his DJ
Burns.
Burns? I sat behind him on a plane. First time in my life not been the biggest guy on a flight.
Cleveland
I
Cavaliers.
actually back when we still had Coach Dale Lair as our head coach and went out looking for a new coach. I was wanting Kevin Keats. He was at UNC Wilmington at the time.
Yeah.
Wilmington.
Yeah.
Did he go Wilmington, NC State,
NC State.
directly? Yeah.
Yeah.
He was I think he was Evan Gordon's coach at Hargrave. And I think Luke Hancock, shout out George Mason, shout out Louisville, was on that team as well. And I think he was the Hargrave coach as well.
He was. Yeah.
Yeah.
He was there for a long time.
Write that down, Will.
All right,
Yes, thank you.
let's pay the bills real quick, and then we'll get a couple quick hitters, and we'll wrap this up. But to pay the bills, Joel Vander Pol is going to introduce our proud sponsor.
You ever done an ad?
I'm about to buy real estate right now, Will, just based on our not just our proud sponsor, our good friend, a guy that was incredible to me at Liberty and has been since. I go out of my way. He goes out of his way to see me every single time we can. Beautiful family. Also, shout out in-law to Omar Mance, another great individual, but Jason Porter's as good as they come. Please pay attention, because if you don't, you're lost.
Well, hey, everybody. My name is Jason Porter. I'm with Legacy Realty and Development, and it's been a great partnership here with Sea of Red lately. I was with Liberty Athletics as the Associate Athletic Director for Sports Medicine, so took care of all of the healthcare needs and coordinated that with a fantastic staff at Liberty in the athletic department, of course, for about 5 or 6 years, and then moved into real estate full-time and with Legacy Realty and Development. And it's just been a great pleasure to continue to stay connected with my Liberty University family and the athletics family as well. Been enjoying serving them. A lot of the graduate assistants and some of the staff that I hired has come back now and has been using me for residential services, which I really appreciate. But certainly do residential real estate as far as buying and selling of homes, of course. And then also we have a strong commercial presence as well. So commercial real estate, obviously a very, very different animal than is residential. But whether it's buying and selling commercial properties or just the leasing of properties, we can help with that as well. So it's been a great opportunity to service our commercial clients as well. And then certainly on the investment front too, a number of folks who have discovered the power of passive income through real estate and investing in real estate with rental properties or fix and flips, those kind of things. And so great joy to serve my clients in that capacity as well. The other thing that I would add too is just a very, very full Rolodex at this point of contractors and subs and just different professional contacts that I've made through the years. So if I can ever provide any of those folks to you and all of a sudden you need a plumber or an electrician or a contractor to build your deck, whatever, I'd certainly be glad to give you access to that Rolodex and those references as well. Because a lot of times it's not exactly who you know, it's who you know that knows how to do the job well. And so I would be glad to provide those services for you as well. So love Flames Nation, love taking care of my Liberty family. And if there's ever anything I can do for you, my contact information is all right here on the screen. And I would love to be a service to you and yours. Thanks so much.
In the time of that ad, he showed and we closed on an 8-plex in Lynchburg just in the time of that advertisement. That's how good he is.
Impressive.
Not as impressive as your intro. Take notes, Will. That's what you need to take notes on. Scrap every other notes. Take notes on the ad reads.
Will's mad because of the ad comment I made. Fair enough.
He's tough.
Listen, John texted some very rude things to me last night.
About me?
So no.
Oh, okay.
So I'm just still like, just a little hurt, and Just throwing off my game.
It was all in love. It was all in love.
It was either last week or 2 weeks ago. I saw Nick and Will going at it about the Reds. It was like, guys, we're all family here. What are we talking about?
It's all love. It's all love. We got a great question here from our friend, the Fried AKC Jack State Memes. I don't know if we have a shorter name for you, but let's figure that out. Who's Liberty's X factor this year? Someone that could take over a tourney game by dropping 30 plus. I don't know about 30 plus. I mean, I think again, like I think Liberty's going to be what they are. I think you're going to see 6 players unless there's foul trouble. Maybe you see like Yates and Decker strategically brought into a couple offensive possessions, but I think it's going to be a 6-man rotation if there's not fouls. I mean, those guys could come in and hit a couple threes, so I guess that's an X factor. But I don't think I don't think Decker comes in and hits 2 threes. They're going to ride with them for the next 20 minutes. Like, I think they're going to say, great, they're going to move on. To kind of answer this question the best I can, I would say there's 2 things for me. Number one is Colin Porter doesn't shoot a lot of threes, but I feel like in big moments, he'll step up, and he might be the guy that kind of gets some shots. So I'd be shocked if he just kind of lets it fly a little bit in a conference tournament game, and you go, wow, he just dropped 25 on us. 30 is a lot for the way Liberty plays. The other guy I would say is Moffmer. 3-point percentage has not been great this year, but if you look at his track record at Cedarville, he was a great shooter. Wouldn't be shocked if he's a guy that his last go-around, is it his last go-around? I don't know who's a senior and who's not. It's his last ride, right?
Yeah.
I wouldn't be shocked if he's a guy that lets it fly and he could put up 20-plus points. So I would say Moffmer and Porter are maybe the 2 guys that could have a big scoring game that you maybe don't expect. But again, they're 2 of the 6 guys that play the most minutes. Any other thoughts, guys?
I'll echo that. I'll say Moffmer. I don't think we've seen the best of Moffmer yet.
Yeah.
I still think he's got a lot left. They just got to find a way to get him going. Didn't do particularly well against Jacksonville State. And if he's a guy that finds something, then that's a game that's close enough we win that game.
Joel, you got anything?
I think that 6 guys are capable of going for 25. And I think to Kirby's point, November and December are not that long ago where we were saying Aquino was a beast. Like, it's not 2 seasons ago where what's happened to it's not right off Owen either. I think Kirby makes a good point about we praise Colin's game management and we praise his ability to just always be in control of the game. But I think as a freshman, he had a big game at one point where we were like, oh, this, I see what he's capable of. Again, he has not gotten worse at scoring. He's just taken on a different role. But I actually would, Talon scoring 30 wouldn't be surprising because we've seen it, right? Caden, we know, could shoot 7 for 11 from 3. Sincerely, he could do that. And but Colin would be the guys on the scouting report, he's averaging 6 a game, and it's like he just dropped 26 on us out of nowhere. And Liberty fans would not be surprised, but he could get lost in his scout. Also, not sure why we're giving Jack State our scouting report for the tournament. That was what was surprising.
Wait, how connected is Fried? How connected is Fried here, John?
I don't know. I mean, he's not on the staff.
We're just fans. We know nothing.
The Gamecock into the hen house. What are we doing?
We know nothing.
Yeah, good points. I like
this is the worst podcast ever. Said we're an embarrassment to the program. So don't.
There you go. I like the Colin Porter discussion. I also like the Moffmer comments, Will. But I'll kind of echo on Owen. We forget that Valpo game so easily where he had 16 and 11, 5 blocks and 3 assists. And we're like, this is the second coming of this guy right here. I mean, he was just amazing. And I don't, he's still that guy. He still has that in him. Obviously there's tape on him now and people are paying attention to him, but I think Coach McKay said it in one of these post games recently is I think Owen's got more left in his tank. And in a do or die, win or go home type situation where every possession is so critical, I think you'll see us feed the post most possessions. or certainly more possessions than we do now. And honestly, I wouldn't be shocked if we start doing that now on the second go around in conference play. Is we haven't seen a 20-point game from Owen. We haven't seen many doubles for him in conference play. I wouldn't be shocked if he starts to figure it out after. I mean, again, this is his first time playing Division I ball. It was his first time going up against a Daniel Bacho, and I mean, every team has a legit big man in this conference. So he's only getting better, only getting stronger, and hopefully only getting more confident. So I wouldn't be shocked if we look up one game in the tournament and he scores 18 and has 12 rebounds and 3 blocks and is our MVP of the game, and it's because of him we're moving on to the next round.
And again, you don't talk about guards in March, right? Everyone knows that. So it's always comes down to a big man. I don't think Nick knows I'm joking.
I know you're
joking. we made that run in 2013 because of Joel Vander Pol.
That's right.
Gardner Webb wasn't a bad game. I will say too, and just calling back a previous point, Owen's minutes are going down a little bit. And again, it's matchup driven. It's who's playing well driven. Come conference tournament time, it's like, wow, this, like, to Coach McKay's point, he maybe hasn't played his best game yet or has a lot left in the tank. Like, he might have some frustration mounting. He may have some more in the tank from just a energy standpoint that could kind of I think he started every single game this year. So right, it wouldn't be. It's weird to say one of your top five guys would be a dark horse, but like it might be situations like, well, he's played 15 less minutes than every other starter, and maybe we're a little bit beat down, and he's like, just give me the ball, and I have a good matchup this game. And frankly, I'd love to see it as a big guy. But.
Yeah, he's been also the most consistently the one in foul trouble.
Yeah.
In a lot of these games.
A lot.
Yeah.
11 points, 4 for 6 shooting, 3 for 4 from the free throw line in that Gardner Webb game. All right. That was a 3-point win too. I mean, those were.
You take 11 away, you lose by 8, right?
Gardner Webb was
a big man. Can you teach some free throws? I mean, I think that's probably the question.
That's the big question. Yeah.
If you want to look at my career best game, it was against Campbell, and I think I was like 8 for 10 or 7 for 10 from the free throw against Eric Griffin. Is that his name from Campbell? But it was like JVP had 20. It's like, 10 were from the free throw line, so it was like not that cool because like you think he went off, he didn't go off, he just hit free throws for once in his life.
I'd take an 8 for 10 from the free throw line.
That's what me and Manson talked about outside of the convocation center on Thursday. Was like, let's talk about free throws for a little bit.
We did. It was a good discussion. We should have taped it.
One last talking point that I just wanted to run by Joel. We had talked about it a lot, and if there's anything else you guys want to talk about, free. But I did want to ask Joel about this because we just talked about this, and the more the season goes on, it's incredible that Liberty's got to Conference USA. It's incredible to have all these games on TV. But, man, it stinks that you're in a one-bid league that your probably best odds are going to be like 25% of winning the tournament. And right now you put Liberty back in the A-Sun. Lipscomb's pretty good this year, but especially with the fact you're probably going to get home court advantage, Liberty would be massive favorites. Well, Joe, what's kind of your stance on that? Because it's like something that's great for the program long term, but right now, man, I don't know. It's like you're torn, but it kind of stinks because it doesn't really matter. Like Liberty would probably be a 12 seed if they were in the A-Sud.
Yeah, it's a good point. No good deed goes unpunished, right? So it's kind of like congratulations on making it to Conference USA. Still a one-bid league or the competition's way stiffer. And to your point, your chances of winning the conference tournament are slimmer. But I do think, and you're talking on both sides of your mouth because we got a 12 seed out of the A-Sun too. So, but again, think about what had to happen that year for how many losses did we have? 4, 5, something like that. Like 4-loss team going into March Madness to get a 12 seed. Obviously, it was a great team. Some people are saying, I'm just kidding. Yeah, I think, there's a couple ways to look at it. You could say it's unfair. We're in a better league. We're playing, stiffer competition, et cetera, et cetera. FAU went to the Final Four out of the. You could make that case. You could also make the case and say, if we're good enough to get there, how much more prepared are we to win a game in the NCAA tournament or two? Right? How prepared? Again, you're not playing a non-conference game till from December on in college basketball for the most part. Shout out Bracket Busters; those were fun. But again, if you're playing in the A-Sun and you are playing A-Sun opponents, North Florida's, Jacksonville's, Stetson's, for 2.5 months leading in, or 2 months leading in, how prepared are you to go beat a Mississippi State? What made us equipped to beat Mississippi State was that we were exceptionally talented, exceptionally mature, and we were competing against ourselves, right? Because we couldn't make the conference opponents our standard. However, 6 teams in Conference USA could probably win an NCAA tournament game. So how much more prepared are you if you get there? And this is why, again, I don't love the idea of an 84-team NCAA tournament. Like, I get why Coach McKay would talk about, like, I get why expansion and dollars and all those things, the conversation's happening. Because the NCAAs and CBS are never going to get away from wanting big brands in their tournaments. So yeah, is it unfair? Sure. But do you want to look at it from a standpoint of, we're incredibly more prepared to go beat a big brand in likely what feels like a road game in March, as opposed to beating, what was the 2020 team? We won the last game of the Vines by what, 10, 12, 15, something like that. It's like, all right, the next team you get to go play is Texas or what. I was like, all right, cool. Like, you haven't prepared yourself for that unless the standard in the building has been that prepares you for that. So I don't know. That's my stance, is that you could look at it both ways, but it is what it is. You can't really manipulate it too much more than the cards you're given.
Yeah, that tournament team had beaten UCLA. They had a ton of confidence that they could knock off anybody in that first round.
Well, that Lipscomb team was also really good. That was the rare year that in the A-Sun you had a 1A and 1B. That Lipscomb team was 45th in KenPom. They went to the NIT finals. It was a joke that they didn't make the NCAA tournament. That's when you get into Conference USA, I've always been someone that's been passionate that mid-majors deserve the benefit of the doubt more. But when you feel it now, it's like you really deserve, because you strive to move up to better conferences, and there's not really the reward. But I mean, yeah, I'll say it. I've said it before. Winning at Lipscomb was more impressive than beating Mississippi State in the tournament. I think it was a tougher game, road environment, hostile environment. You got Mississippi State kind of in a neutral floor. I think
Liberty.
I think beating that Lipscomb in the third game you played on the road with all the marbles, I think that was the most difficult win that Liberty's ever had in program history,
and
because of the road environment.
And what also had to be true, like Georgie's 3 from the corner, the inbound to Scotty where they threw it. Or was it inbound play maybe? I think it was an inbound play. They threw it over, like
Scotty's flop.
Yes. Yeah. I ran into Garrison Mathews at my golf club, I don't know, a couple years ago, maybe a year ago. And I went up to him because he's playing for the Hawks now, or at the time it was. And I was like, I think I texted you this, Manson. I said, I was like, hey, man, I played at Liberty, whatever. And he's like, Scotty flopped. And I was like, oh, okay. We're on an NBA contract right now, and still living
Scotty James in your head. Yeah. I think the discussion we need to have is, why does Conference USA not reward its regular season team's performance? Is there any other one bid league out there that doesn't reward your regular season performance more than Conference USA? Now again, like Joel's saying, talking out both sides of my mouth. I love the neutral site tournaments.
Yeah.
It's amazing. I want that because I'm looking forward to it. I've got time blocked off on my calendar to go to Huntsville because it's going to be a blast. But let's just say, the first half of the conference repeats itself, which it won't, and Jack State goes 14-4 and they win the league in the regular season by 3 games. What's their reward? They don't get a reward. They get to wear white, as you hear Coach McKay talks about all the time, white uniforms in the tournament, and then they have to play, maybe a Louisiana Tech in the first round. They have no reward. Most other leagues you have in the ASUN, it was home court. The Big South, it was home court. They did cool stuff where a lot of times the 1 seed would host the semifinals and the finals. The Sun Belt has this crazy thing. It's kind of like the West Coast Conference, I think it is, where like their top 2 seeds get buys into the semifinals. And it's like this crazy, like 6-round tournament. I think Conference USA as a traditional 1-bid league needs to look into, I'm all for the neutral site. Sun Belt still has neutral site. West Coast Conference still has neutral site. I think they need to look into rewarding regular season success. Because like we're talking about, like, what does it matter if you're the 3 seed or the 6 seed? Who cares? But you're playing the same team and you get no reward.
I disagree with no reward. You get to play 1 less game than some others, and you get to play on paper the worst team. This is not most conferences are, especially 1-bid conferences, are not this competitive top to bottom. So typically your reward is essentially 2 buys. One of them you play, one of them you rest, right? And so they are getting a reward, but from I also think the neutral site elevates the league and elevates the tournament, because
I agree.
If Jacksonville State is hosting, that's not a good tournament for anybody, for viewers, for players, for fans, for family. How many Hampton Inns are there? And so I think
None.
you reward. It's like shout out Days Inn on Main Street. No,
maybe a Super 8.
I think the reward is you get for sure a bye, depending on how many teams there are, comparatively to other teams, and you get to play the worst team on paper. But most 9 seeds aren't that competitive, or 8 seeds aren't that competitive in most leagues. We just happen to be in an odd league. Kirby, give me the stat because I need you to back me up here. I'm going off of feel here. Most leagues are not going to have as formidable of an 8 or 9 seed as Conference USA is this year. And so I think there is a tangible reward. It's just not felt as much, maybe in this league or maybe this year.
Yeah, no, there's not FIU is the only team that's sub 200. Everyone else is 176th or better. And we're talking, so Liberty's 76th in KenPom, and then every other team is 123 to 176. To have your entire league almost in that small of a box is crazy.
The question is
I don't think there's another league like that in college basketball this year.
The question is then, what do you have to do to be a 2-bid league, right? Like that's because you could say, why don't you reward a 1? You could also say, what does a league have to do to get 2 bids? Because then Kirby's point would be saying, like, if you have two 23-win teams that play in a championship game and lose to want to lose, is like, what does that team have to do to, like, and then let's just say Liberty loses in the championship game. Who'd you beat in the Virgin Islands? Like, it's like, why are we so like black and white on that is a 1-bid league? That is a 1-bid league. That to me seems like the problem. Now, again, we don't get to make decisions, and we don't know what CBS and their advertisers are saying about it. I get why you wouldn't want to be like, you know what this tournament needs? It needs UTEP and Jacksonville State. That's what this tournament needs. I get that, because the brands in this league are not national loved brands.
Sure. I mean, the other problem too is we've played 0 quad 1 games this year. Like we just don't have opportunities. How many quad 1 games are SEC teams getting? You know, I mean, they're getting double-digit quad 1 games from conference games. So, I mean, when you get to it, and you know, again, we were talking about it back in the non-con about Liberty putting together an at-large resume, and it hasn't panned out because we got 4 conference losses. Like we would have had to gone, you know, 15-3 or 16-2 in conference play to be in that conversation. But still, if we'd be sitting there on the bubble, you know, 24-5 or whatever the record would have been. But we'd be on the bubble against teams that have played 12 quad 1 games and they're 5-7, and they're going to say, well, what has Liberty done? Oh, their best win is over a Kansas State team who finished 9th in the Big 12. You know, so again, we just don't have.
Liberty's going to go with 24 wins and then go play a 17-14 at-large team out of the Big 10. It's like, okay, right. Cool.
You want to hear the most
yes,
the most brutal thing, the kind of put this into perspective. So this is the 2023 Conference USA. Florida Atlantic, that net rating, they were 17th in the country. They got a 9 seed. No one else made it. North Texas was 31st.
Wow.
UAB was 47th. Then to make it. Guess what happened in the NIT? North Texas and UAB played in the championship against each other. Florida Atlantic made it to the Final Four. North Texas and UAB made it to the NIT championship and played each other.
So at one point,
and they got 1 bid.
There were 6 teams remaining, and 3 of them were from the Conference USA.
Yeah.
At one point in the college.
If there's ever a discussion about like mid-majors getting screwed, it was the 2023 Conference USA. And there's never Florida Atlantic did. I think the next year got a much better seed because
they left
based on their. No, they did leave.
Yeah,
I did leave, but I still think that their previous year did kind of give them the benefit of the doubt.
I think they were preseason ranked like
top 10.
I thought it was like 15. It was 10. Yeah,
somewhere
like,
top 15.
Because no one transferred out, and they kept their coach.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's as disheartening as it gets. It's like even if Liberty gets up to like that top 40. And they're another team like La Tech takes a leap, and you kind of have that back and forth, you still might get left off, and that's just.
Well, look at Indiana State last year. I mean, I don't remember their net was top 35 or whatever it was, and maybe top 30. And
they ran their conference, didn't they?
Yeah, they did. I think they had like 1 or 2 losses in the regular season.
And lost in the championship.
Lost in the championship game. Was it to Bradley? I think it was. And
another mid-major that got screwed.
Yeah, and they ended up going to the NIT, and didn't they make a run in the NIT as well? I think they made the championship game.
They lost in the championship, yeah.
Yeah, so
it's in the NIT championship. It's usually like didn't Lipscomb play? Who did they play in that? It's usually like a mid-major.
Was it Texas?
They lost
yeah,
Texas.
It's like usually like a mid-major and then like an underperforming, Power 4 or whatever. Blue blood usually.
Yeah. Well, in fairness to maybe some of the NITs recently. Some of these high major teams are having a lot of opt-outs. So I think I don't know every team situation, but there may be some advantages where the mid majors, everyone's going to play. Like you get an opportunity. It's big. High majors, you're going to have, I know from what I do as a day job, one of the local teams made the NIT and like they treated it like a complete joke. Like they had no interest in playing. So there may be some of that, like Indiana State making a run. They may have had some advantageous breaks, but
hold on.
But
well, when there's some sit outs,
this is not your full-time job.
Not at the moment.
Were there some sit outs from Villanova? I mean, there might have been some injuries as well, but hey, on paper, it doesn't show any sit outs. It just shows that Liberty beat Villanova in the NIT. So,
yes, sir.
And we've got that banner hanging, round of 32, NIT 2023 or whatever it was.
I'll hang a copy downstairs. I don't care. I no shame. Dan had a good point to push back on Kirby. Always a good comment when you start with that. Will we have the same recruits? No, I think it's a great point, Dan. I mean, I do think that the team that won the ASUN, those are some of the best players Liberty's ever had, but they weren't the higher recruits either. They kind of developed that way. But yeah, I don't think Owen Aquino is coming to play for Liberty in the ASUN. I think that's probably not happening. probably the same thing with Enon as well. So yeah, it's definitely raised that. Again, I'm not. I don't want to complain just to complain, but it just kind of stinks that that Liberty's this good. I really think this team is really, really good, and it's going to come down to a 25% chance of making the tournament.
How good, Kirby? How good?
Right now, I would say it's the best defensive team in school history.
Well, that comment that was made a couple years. That was that year we lost at Kennesaw, and you look back at that team on paper, like they were good. I mean, you want to talk about that 2020 team, not getting to play in the NCAA tournament is terrible. It's one of the things always going to be one of the biggest what ifs in Liberty history. But another big what if Liberty got to play Kennesaw at home in 2023? Like, that was another team that we would have had a good seed, and not to dribble up those
qualities. That shot quality score still gives me nightmares. I think we should have won the game by like 16 points based on the quality of shots that we got. It haunts me. I want to cry every time I even think about it.
I know. I feel like John and Kirby are getting choked up right now thinking back to that.
I am.
Some pain.
A whole other side thing here. The 2020 team, like, they kind of got to go out on a blaze of glory. Like, they won their last.
Oh, it's the greatest. Sure. Like, we would have gone to the Final Four, but like, can't say they were wrong.
No,
yeah, you can't. But they could have gone to the NCAA tournament, and not say they would have, but like, they could have went and got beat by. Had a bad matchup and lost by 25.
You're a 12
points.
seed. You're going to be the underdog. But everybody says, looking back on the team, and no disrespect to those guys, great team. It's 1A and 1B is the greatest team ever, but. Everybody says, "Oh, that team was going to the Sweet 16." I saw a comment this weekend that team was going to the Elite Eight. No doubt, that team was going to the Elite Eight. They could have, but yeah, it is a good point where it's like, because it didn't happen, they're on that pedestal, and you can't say one way or the other if they were or were not.
John, do you remember the quarterfinal and semifinal games those years?
One of them was it Jacksonville?
In JIT, they only beat by 6 points. 55-49. Stetson beat by 4 points. I mean,
that's when the pack line was alive and well.
296th team in the country, 288th team in the country.
We were sweating those games.
Like, that's the thing about the ASON is you go play a game like that in Conference USA, you're going to get beat by 20 points in the conference tournament.
Wow.
What was the final score of that Lipscomb game at home?
And then they won the Lipscomb game by 16, and it was probably not even that close.
That mile 3 is top 5 favorite shots in Liberty history.
And to that team's credit, like, these conference tournament games are incredibly hard when you're the favorite.
Liberty had all the pressure.
You have to throw away a lot of the numbers.
Yeah,
like
all the pressure.
And they felt that that was not them playing bad because they weren't good. That was them playing down to their competition because I think they were terrified. We can't lose to the 296th team in the country when we're coming off an NCAA tournament win. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of variables to that. But
the funny thing is
how the narrative gets formed.
The funny thing is we think back to that team, and again, not taking anything away from them, but do we remember those 2 losses we had back to back on that Florida trip, North Florida and Stetson? 48-43 against Stetson, 288th ranked team in the country, and we score 43 points on the road.
I would say 43 is a lot in that gym, if we're being honest. That's not that bad. If you ask me.
Fair point, but it's funny how your mind remembers things. You forget stuff and you remember certain things, and when you're in the moment and you go through a couple of these losses we've had this season, you're thinking, "Oh my gosh, this team is nowhere near as good as we were back then." And again, no disrespect to those guys, but our teams are good.
Changed, so you're viewing the losses and the wins from a different vantage point. Like, again, back up to 2018, just make up a random year. This amount of our conference wins right now would have been awesome non-con wins for us in the past that we would have been drooling over having the chance to get. And now it's like an expectation. We've probably been favored in every single conference game we've played, right? Like even Jacksonville State, we were favored by 3.5. So it's like we have taken for granted the rising tide that we're kind of all sitting on, because we couldn't even schedule non-con games that are as good as the conference games that we're beating at Kennesaw or, playing on Saturday against Jacksonville. So I don't know, State.
To your point, Jacksonville State would have been the third best team that the 2020 team played all year.
And they played UCLA that year?
You could go deeper than that.
How do you find that so fast?
I live on KenPom, right? I can tell you you're lucky because you only have 2 years of game data that transferred over. They didn't have game logs for players until your junior year. But Sam Houston State would be the third best team that the 2020 Liberty team would have played. The team that's 1-7 in the Conference USA right now.
What an unbelievable team to have a 9,000 seat arena and fill 45 seats. We played there when I was playing.
You played at Sam Houston State?
Yeah, it was. I don't think it was a standalone. I think we had all these like Gazelle group put together tournaments where it'd be like you go play A&M and then you go play so and so and then you go play in like the junior varsity version of a tournament at Corpus Christi or whatever. And I want to say Sam Houston State was part of a tournament that we played some games on the road, and then we met at a neutral
UC
site.
Irvine, Sam Houston, and Southern Miss 2012-2013 season.
Oh, that was the year
that we started 0-8. Sorry.
Didn't end 0-8.
We ended in the NCAA tournament. But yeah, we played UC Irvine, Sam Houston, and Southern Miss back to back to back. And Sam Houston, it says it was an away game. The other two were neutrals.
You know what it was? I think it was at Sam Houston, but they were the host. But they were the away team on paper. I believe it was at their gym.
What was Dale doing that year? You guys scheduled a brutal schedule in the non-con.
Yeah.
Hey,
that was the year we won, or the year after?
That was the year you won. Richmond, Georgetown, Southern Miss, who was top 60 team, Iona.
Georgetown, this was not the current Georgetown. This was...
I think we lost by 12, right?
It was like Georgetown, Kentucky.
You lost by 9.
No, this was the Georgetown team that was 16th in the country.
And
that
people
actually
don't talk
got
about this
upset by
enough.
Florida Gulf Coast.
People don't talk about that. They were 2 seed. People don't talk about this enough. I was still hurt against Georgetown.
Oh,
we win that game. We win that game if Joel's healthy.
16-18, easy. My first game back was against Howard. That was in DC. That was a fun one. Oh, Lord have mercy.
Good times.
This thing's gotten off the track.
It's just the longest.
I'm not getting invited back. Can we just say it? I'm just not getting invited back. Is that fair to say?
No, this was fun.
No, I've had a blast. This is great. All right. Any final thoughts? I probably better, go do work and stuff.
Good stuff. I appreciate you coming on, JVP. Good.
That was fun.
Good information. I'm
looking forward. I hope I didn't say everything I have to say. Like my diminishing returns for next time.
No, we'll have you back. Maybe before the tournament, maybe like that week we'll have you on. Will, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of the second half of the conference season. So coming down the stretch, a good Louisiana Tech team coming in, but they haven't won on the road. So it should be kind of interesting to see how that goes.
Oh, yeah, we talked about it. Liberty's got a brutal 4-game stretch coming up.
Yeah.
We didn't even talk. La Tech at home.
Tough road trip. Yeah.
Sam Houston at home. That's, probably the most favorable game, but that Sam Houston team is kind of desperate and makes you a little nervous. And then
you have to win that
at New Mexico State and at UTEP.
I got a final thought for John.
This is a tough 4-game stretch. Let's say 3-1. Those will probably record after the stretch. 3-1 is our expectation.
I like
Who's the one?
It doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. John, think about this.
I'm going 2-2.
The Kennesaw State game that we lost, right, that we all remember. We may have a chance, if there's a chance the conference plays out very similarly this year, where we get to host that last game against Jack State in a similar vibe, right? It's like we dropped the game on the road, but the season finale we get to host for the number 1 overall seed. Could that be the one that makes us forget that Kennesaw got to be the number 1 seed and host the conference tournament last year, the ASON? Could it be?
Let's hope so.
Let's hope so.
Let's hope so.
83-68 was the shot quality score.
Wow.
Yeah, that's tough. Well, Joel, really appreciate it, my man. Thanks so much for taking some time and joining us. I had a blast. Shout out Jason Porter Real Estate. Shout out Ironclad Coffee. Get all your coffee there. Have a great week. Let's go have a 2-0 homestand this weekend. Go out support team. Thursday night's going to be an environment. CBS Sports Network, national TV. I hope Liberty Arena is popping for that. And we'll talk about it here in probably a couple weeks and see where we're at. Go Flames.